Again, good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the Birmingham Museum of Art. I want to do a couple things, and then I want to get out of the way, because these people who you have seated before you are your special guests. And before I get started, I want to do a few acknowledgments. Let me first start by saying everybody in this room is very special, and if you're in here, you're special to me, because we're all here to celebrate a very special person. But I want to start by acknowledging Carol Clark, Birmingham City Council, District 8 representative. I think that's the other elected official. I want to acknowledge Lisa McNair. I want to acknowledge the godmother of all godmothers, Odessa Whipple. And of course, probably the two most special guests actually in this room, and that is Dr. Carol Shuttlesworth and Ruby Shuttlesworth. Of course, Reverend Wilder. Where are you, sir? Listen, everybody, tonight we honor a man who can be summed up in one word, and that one word, icon. The Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth is more than a name on an airport or a street sign. By it. The Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth was the personification of courage. And make no mistake, everyone, make no mistake, every step he took was a movement for Black lives. Tonight is a celebration, an education, an affirmation that the Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth is more than just another activist. He was our hero. Tonight's panel, entitled Illuminating Shuttlesworth, is a discussion that seeks to honor the life and legacy of Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth. Now, in this discussion, we are joined by Rico Gatson, this young, powerful man you see seated in the middle, the featured artist of the BMA's latest wall-to-wall installation, who chose Shuttlesworth as the theme for his community mural. Siddhartha Mitter, New York Times artist, New York Times art journalist, that is. Martha Bouyer, the educational coordinator for Bethel Baptist Church. And Haley Ringo, the Hugh Cole curator of contemporary art for the Birmingham Museum of Art and co-curator of the Wall-to-Wall initiative, which commissions contemporary artists to create site work throughout the non-gallery areas of the main floor. And of course, Ruby Shuttlesworth, daughter of the Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth. Now it's important, before I yield the floor, that I give you a little bit more background and context of our panelists tonight, because they have such a powerful impact, and collectively, I think we are all in for a treat for this celebration tonight. Rico Gatson is a multimedia visual artist whose work explores themes of history, identity, and spirituality through sculpture, painting, video, and public art. Over the course of almost 3 decades, he has been celebrated for politically layered artworks, often based on significant moments in Black history. His work has been exhibited nationally as well as internationally. Dr. Martha Bouyer serves as the Executive Director of the historic Bethel Baptist Church Community Restoration Fund in Birmingham, Alabama. Ms. Martha also served as the tourism consultant for the Alabama African American Civil Rights History Sites Consortium and the Alabama Civil Rights Tourism Association, representing 20 sites. Ms. Martha is an award-winning educator, administrator, and curriculum developer whose passion for teaching has taken her around the world and brought teachers from around the world to Birmingham to work with her. Her interactive and engaging work creates a space for dialogue designed to expand knowledge of the modern civil rights movement. Siddhartha Mitter is a journalist who is interested in the work and ideas of artists and in the creative life of cities and communities. He is based in New York City, and these days he writes mostly for the New York Times. In the last few months, he has reported on the artists and art events from Germany, Mexico, Los Angeles, Chicago, and New Orleans. He has roots on the East Coast and in India, and has traveled and written extensively in Africa. And he's also visited Birmingham several times before. Welcome back home. You can stay as long as you want. Seriously. And his favorite vegetable is okra. Now let me just pause. Young brother, let me pause. Because if you have time when this is over, there's a place down the street called Chasers that has amazing okra. Okay. His favorite vegetable, as I said, is okra, and he'll be sure to take some home back from New York at the end of the week. And of course, we have Haley Ringo as the Hugh Call Curator of Contemporary Art at the Birmingham Museum of Art, where we are all here right now. And let me tell you all a little bit. She has an extensive portfolio that is too extensive to get into, but what I can tell you, seated to her right, part of her curation included Rico Gatson, Icons 2007 to 2017 Video Studio. She is a Fall 2018 Andy Warhol Curatorial Fellow, and she has a BA from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and an MA from the University of Texas at Austin. And of course, as stated earlier, Miss Ruby Shuttlesworth. Now everybody, last note. Following an hour-long discussion with the panelists, there will be some time for all of you all to ask questions to the group. Thank you all again for joining us for tonight's program, and I intentionally did not wear a suit coat because I wanted to show off this shirt.
Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth of the Bethel Baptist Church is the Negro feared most by the white citizens of Birmingham. A militant leader, he has a faithful following. He has been the target of a mob, 2 bombings, and a long history of harassment. Reverend Shuttlesworth is the voice of the Negro in Birmingham, who no longer is willing to wait for the whites to make a move toward equality of the races. For the privilege of leading his people, he has paid a heavy penalty.
Reverend Shuttlesworth, what is life like for you in Birmingham?
Well, life for me, it's pretty difficult, if I could use that expression. I have to have somebody to guard my home at night. Been for 4 years. The police won't do it. It causes your family, wife and children, to go through severe strain and so forth. But we've learned to make out on it. We found out that if you can't take it, you can't make it. There have been 2 bombings there, and life is a struggle here for me in Birmingham, but it's a glorious struggle.
Would you care to tell us about the 2 bombings?
The first bombing was in December 1956, Christmas night, when somebody planted 12 sticks of dynamite between the church and the house where it was then, about that space, and you have to turn sideways to walk between. The dynamite was placed right at the corner of the church and the corner of the house. And that's where the head of my bed was, and I was in the bed, so that it blew the wall that was between my head and the dynamite away. It blew the floor from underneath the bed. We never did find where the springs went to. The front columns were blown into the street, and the roof came down, yet I didn't get a scratch. So I said that I was saved to lead the fight.
Reverend Shuttlesworth, how many times have you been beaten?
Well, physically, I've been mobbed once, badly. I have faced 2 mobs in this city. And of course, I have no doubt that I would have been beaten in the jails upon one of my arrests, but for the fact that there were several more men arrested with me. Some of the whites really wanted to get to me. I had no fear, however.
When you say you were badly beaten, how badly?
Quite badly. The first time I saw brass knuckles, I was being struck with them. This mob had chains, brass knuckles, sticks, and other things in front of Phillips High School in September of '57, when we went down and tried to enroll the children. And this wrist was almost broken, and I was knocked to the ground, I guess 5 or 6 times. I was kicked. My face was terrifically scarred. The skin were all off my ears. My knees were badly scuffed up. I have scars now that are visible. Behind here, 1 or 2 in my head, 1 there. Now, you're conscious that they're trying to kill you. And really, this mob at this time weren't just trying to beat me up. They were trying to kill me. You see, actually, a mob is so bent on doing harm till they are not composed. And it's amazing how weak a person is who is a mobster at the time. My own personal feelings, I think that's what you want to get, is you feel sorry. You don't understand how men, otherwise calm, peaceable men, whether they be white or otherwise, could act worse than raving beasts, could just want blood, and no matter how they do, and they realize that the cameras were there, they realized they were being seen, but their hopes were to kill me, to get me. So you see, I've been near death 3 times in Birmingham, so.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. We have a large panel, so we're going to get going very promptly, but I would be remiss not to start by acknowledging everybody who's here, the city of Birmingham, Mayor Woodfin, the museum, the Shuttlesworth family. As the mayor mentioned, I'm not from here. I am from different places, but I live and work out of New York City. And it's good to be back here, but I'm not from here. And so I measure fully the honor and the responsibility that comes with being in this space, with these people, with this topic, in this spirit, on this day. So I want to thank you very much for letting me be here. With that said, we're going to keep it light, keep it moving here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just ask each of you in sequence just a couple of questions just to kind of set the tone here, and then we'll see where we go from there. So, Ms. Ruby, I'm going to start with you, if I may. I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of a national perspective, a big picture perspective about the memory of Reverend Shuttlesworth, the legacy of Reverend Shuttlesworth, and the presence that he has in the culture, in the politics, in the society, in the history books, at the national level. What have you seen that you appreciate about how we're thinking about him? What do we need to do more? What are the misimpressions that may exist at the national level? Yeah, we'll get to Birmingham in a second. Yeah, at the national level. I think you just speak into it. It's going to.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
You
At the
hold it close.
national level, on January 7th, my birthday, 2001, the year I retired, President Bill Clinton gave him the Medal of Honor. Following that, he was given the Jefferson Medal of Honor. Internationally, he has been given an award twice, but by this, I can't call the name, this university in Germany. So he is known more in other countries than he is here. I would call Daddy an unsung hero because of an incident that happened in 1963 when he did not allow President Kennedy and Dr. King to call off the demonstrations here in Birmingham. He had been hit by fire hoses and had been hospitalized. And I think they said he had about 3 or 4 hypos. But when my cousin Julia came to the hospital and said, Reverend King called off the movement, called off the demonstration with President Kennedy. He got up and he went to Gaston Motel. And in that movie, 4 Little Girls, the gentleman that spoke said, the weak one was at the door. And he raised sand. He said to Dr. King, no, you cannot call it off. And because of that, he was blackballed by the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. But President Kennedy wrote the Civil Rights Act of 1963. And he started it by saying, but for Birmingham, we would not be here today. So all that he didn't get then, he's certainly getting now. And I'm so thankful.
Let me ask you a personal follow-up question, if I may. How does he live with you now?
He's always in my heart. My mother left us at 48 years of age. My daddy lived to 89. There were so many things that they did together. My mother and father, my brother, my baby sister Carol, and Dr. Shuttlesworth were in the house Christmas night. My sister Pat was not there. She had been injured. She had been burned in November, so she was not there. But I have fond memories of my father. He was fun, but he was a hard taskmaster. He demanded good grades. He demanded respect. And one time a teacher called him and said, Reverend, your daughter's reading this book called Trumbull Park, and I don't think she should be reading that. And he came and he said, Ricky, what you reading? I said, well, I'm reading Trumbull Park. I said, what is it about? He asked me what it was about. I said, well, it's about this. He said, okay. Her concern was there were too many curse words. But we have learned early, you overlook the words and look at the content. So he was a wise man. He was very intelligent. He got all A's in college and 1 B. And he got the B because he told the professor he was wrong. You know, I learned from that there's a time to tell the professor you're not right, okay? My mother was a doll baby. That's why I love Reverend C.T. Vivian so much, because wherever I saw him, he always asked about my sweet mother. My mother was a person that took care of her children. My brother and my sister have written poems about them. In fact, my brother has a thing called Keeler Concepts. That's my mom's last name. And it's poems about our family. He has a poem on Daddy called Kingfish. Poem on my mother, Ruby Kay. Even a poem on all of his brothers and sisters and our children. And my oldest sister, Pat, who has been our mother since my mom died at 48 in 1971. And his poem is called The Gucci Slave. Every year, you know how you have Black History Time at your church and everybody dressed as slaves? She was always sharp. Whatever could be made to look really good, she had it on. But we had a wonderful family. We always traveled together because Daddy pastored in Mobile, Selma, Montgomery, and we were always in the car together. And he could speed. I mean, he was always speeding. But we were together in that instance. But my mother was there. She was there at Phillips. She was there for the bombing. She was there at the train station when they got on the train to integrate the white section, and Reverend Lamar Weaver went to the colored section. God has been good to our family. We have not been rewarded for all we did. Like this one man on one of the trips that I do to educate people about what happened in the South and taking young people to Washington to see their responsibilities and as a citizen and to be more productive. He said, Miss Besser, how come everybody in the civil rights business is rich but y'all? And I said, Daddy had a habit when we was at Bethel. And this is my friend, everybody, Frances Foster White. I brought her up here because she's my brain. When we left, we were so undone. We were wretches undone from the harassments that we had received, the late night calls, the drive-through. But when I ask her things, she can tell me what happened and it comes back. When we were 8, I think you get to be blood sisters, and that's what we do. I forgot what I was telling them all that time. I had to tell you about Francis, but we had a wonderful family. And if I didn't answer your question, you can ask me again.
No, you did great. You did great. You did great. Dr. Bouyer, maybe you could speak a little bit about the presence and the spirit of Reverend Shuttlesworth in Birmingham today, about work that you and others may be doing, or what you see in the city right now that is in the spirit of Dr. Shuttlesworth, of Reverend Shuttlesworth, and what direction the city could be heading to live his legacy in the fullest.
For me, as the executive director of the historic Bethel Baptist Church Community Restoration Fund, I get a chance every day to tell this wonderful story about a selfless, fearless, and I could go on and on and on with adjectives to describe Reverend Shuttlesworth. And people come from all over the world to Bethel Baptist Church. It's just amazing. I think that probably the family that traveled farthest came from Australia. And it was like they were making this big plan for a trip and trying to find a place that could relate to them and what they did and what they experienced in their country. And the Freedom Rides really stood out. So as they were looking at that, they decided to come to Birmingham to Bethel Baptist Church. And Reverend Wilder and I are doing some amazing work, and we found out just the other day that we have been nominated as, I think, one of 13 top places to visit in Alabama. And that was just amazing. It's because of what we do. Our goal at Bethel Baptist Church is to educate, engage, and empower people who come to learn about the church, Reverend Shuttlesworth, and its role in the modern civil rights movement. I just finished a 3-week teacher institute for teachers from all over the United States who came to Alabama to learn more about this history in an effort to try to make sense of what happened, why it happened, and where we're going now as a nation. So in doing that, we keep the legacy up. We give people an opportunity to sign the pledge, the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights pledge that Reverend Shuttlesworth developed. We tell them the story. We take them out to the Memorial Garden. And for a lot of our people, it's a matter of kind of like whetting the appetite. People come, that was really good. But at the same time, we have people who come who are just curious. Maybe they heard about this somewhere and didn't know a lot. But at the same time, we have people come who are just insatiable. It doesn't matter how much we say, they want to go on and on and on, and we're able to provide that. We've been very fortunate lately. We've gotten a couple of grants from the National Park Service, and we got support from the city of Birmingham to help us do a thing called a historic structures report. It's like without that, moving forward and trying to tell the story, we were at a standstill. But because of the work of the city, and especially with that report, the work of the National Park Service, and people from all over the world, we change lives. We make a difference Every day we open the doors, someone is there, and we give them an opportunity to learn more about Reverend Shuttlesworth and the vision for Birmingham. And I want you to know that what he did as we talk to people, not only did he set Birmingham free, but Alabama, the nation. And, you know, we always talk about, it sounds cliche-ish, but it's not. We talk about throwing a pebble into a pond and watching the ripples. Well, Birmingham was like that. It's like we were the pond, and then Reverend Shuttlesworth, the pebble. And then this has been rippling still all over the world. And I want to say one more thing. When we talk about what happened at Bethel, we make the point that when teenagers in China in Tiananmen Square faced their government, when their government decided they didn't like what the students were doing, they linked arms and started singing, "We Shall Overcome." When the Berlin Wall fell, they were singing, "We Shall Overcome." And when we think about where did they learn that? How did they understand the importance of that? It all starts in Birmingham. And once again, when President Kennedy is talking about Birmingham and what's going on, and it's really at a major meeting, he was kind of upset about it, really. He said, but for Birmingham, we wouldn't be here today. So this idea of looking at Birmingham and what can we do, we changed it and we moved the world. Thank you, Birmingham.
I want to give the floor now to Rico, and I want to turn to the art. Can we get an image of Rico's work? Yeah. People may not know that this is a piece of work in a long-standing series for you, that you have been doing work to honor certain people that you feel worthy of honor for a long time, at large scale, at small scale, in the public, in small pieces, in your studio, and that you've done it with a particular style. Every single one is different, and yet everybody knows that's in the series, with the idea of the radiating lines and color coming off of a central character. And every once in a while, the character's on the side, or smaller, or bigger, and sometimes there's a lot of variation, but there's also a lot of commonality. I should tell you that in New York City, you know, our infrastructure is kind of a mess, and the subway system is a real problem in a lot of ways. But one thing that they do very well is they have a very, very, very good public art program in the subway. And Rico has mosaic murals at the 167th Street stop on the D train in the Bronx, and you know, he's got Justice Sotomayor there, and other heroes. And so if you go there to the Bronx Museum, actually, you get off there and you see his work in the subway. So I say all that to say this is a special project for you, but it's also a long-standing practice. And maybe you could tell folks a little bit about how did you come to this practice of honoring and celebrating? Whom did you decide to celebrate? And did it become a thing? Did you do it once and then it just became a thing?
Is it on?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, there's a lot that you put in there.
You can take any part
which
of it.
I appreciate, yeah. But you know, I guess I take it back to like the essence, and not try to drag this out too long, because first and foremost, I'm just like, you know, blown away with the moment, being on this stage with the folks here, and feeling a bit overwhelmed by it all. So just bear with me as I try to speak to the art, which is often, I think, the least important part of it for me, because I am trying to sort of take on this history, the power of these really important figures in history. But I will say that, you know, the project started out as I wanted to honor these really important individuals of African American and African descent. And I was really thinking about like, thinking of them as like superheroes. And I took what was a very simple graphic trope of like the radiating lines, which for me represents energy and light. And so, so for me, it was like a matter of wanting to sort of do something that honored and celebrated these heroes, some well-known, some a little lesser well-known, musicians, writers, academics, thinkers. You know, one of the things that I try to do when I'm making these portraits, when I'm producing these portraits, is I try to situate myself inside, and therefore become like I want to become a conduit for channeling the energy that they represent. And so as I'm making the work, both the smaller portraits, which are all handmade, and the mural that's here at the museum is I'm really thinking about the transference of this sort of energy coming through me back into the work, and I humbly leave it there. It's spiritual. It's, in that sense for me, it's like, and I guess something that I want to say related to the project that's happening here and sort of the situation that's occurring, that will be occurring on Friday, and working with my assistant, who's on the ladder, Martha, is that it's really exciting to oh, well, first and foremost, I want to say that this is the largest to date, the largest mural to date. And secondly, this is the first time where I'm inviting others to kind of sort of come to the process and put hand into work. And that for me is spiritual, this notion of bringing people together as a community to help to complete this piece. You know, of course, the Shuttlesworths sort of kicking that off. And so I'm really excited about the notion of like you, the community, as participants in the completion of this project, and therefore your energy will be transferred into this piece and celebrating this person who was, I believe, really about love and express light and strength and courage in the face of, like, as described, very you know, horrific things. So yeah, so it's all of that in a nutshell, trying to, you know, so for me, that's what the project is about in the whole. And thank you for mentioning the project in the Bronx. That was a mosaic that I get to do, and yeah.
Wonderful. I'm going to come back to you in a second, but I'm going to give you a short break. Hallie, maybe you could speak to us a little bit about, you know, why this is happening in the first place, how this came together, and what it means to you. I know that you and Rico have had the chance to collaborate in the past. What it means to the museum, if you feel comfortable speaking, you know, on behalf of the museum, for us to be here right now on this. Or maybe you'd just like to talk about your own personal perspective, what it means to you. You're a curator, you know, curator of contemporary art, but you're a lot of other things. You're a Southerner, you're many things. So take it where you like.
Okay, thank you. Well, I mean, this means a lot to me. Working with Rico again after a few years is such an honor, and it's been incredible. Rico and I worked together when I lived in New York, and we put a show together very quickly at the last minute, but it was great. It was Rico Gatson Icons 2007 to 2017, where we took a look at these icons all together. And I think, if you don't mind, what Rico didn't mention is that those icons are just the size of a sheet of paper. They're blown up here, so they look huge, but they're not big in real life, but they are very powerful. And the second I moved here, I knew I wanted to work with Rico, and I think that was the first proposal I put into the museum, was doing a project in our lobby with Rico that recognizes a Birmingham figure. And, you know, I know a lot of people hate contemporary art. I just, like, a lot of people don't understand it, and I don't understand all of it, and I'm not gonna lie. But I think it's important when you walk in the museum to understand that this isn't a space of authority. It's not a space where we know everything and we're just trying to transfer information. It's a place of conversation. It's a place where we're, as curators and as artists, are as vulnerable as our audience. And I want people to walk in and see someone or something that they recognize and to have that authority, because most of the time our visitors know more about what we are presenting than we do. One can't be an expert in everything. And so that was kind of the impetus for Wall to Wall. And when I invited Rico, I knew that he was going to pick a wonderful Birmingham legend, and we kept talking about Shuttlesworth over and over and over, and it was so exciting to see him decide to really research Shuttlesworth and to become part of Birmingham. And you know, I picked Rico in part because he's not from Birmingham. And, you know, I wanted Siddhartha to come because he's not from Birmingham. We know that Reverend Shuttlesworth is under-recognized. We know that, you know, Mrs. Ruby Shuttlesworth is even more under-recognized, and that bringing people from outside in, bringing people with a national presence to engage with this history is so important, because they'll go home and, you know, this will forever be part of the work that you've done, and it will forever be hopefully forever be the largest, I'm saying it now, so now you have to commit to it, the largest icon.
It will be.
Thank you. Thank you, Hallie.
Yeah.
I want to give all of you all advance notice that I'm going to be turning the floor over to you very soon. So if you have questions that you want to start marinating or so on, because I think there's a lot of knowledge in this room. I think there's a lot of experience in this room. I think there may also be a lot of curiosity or questions in this room for the different people who are on this panel. So we're going to go to that in a second. But Hallie, you mentioned the research process, and I think, you know, Rico, you and I, when we were chatting, this came up a couple of times. You came to Birmingham a whole bunch of times in the past year, if I'm not mistaken. And is there anything you'd like to share about what the research was like? What kind of immersion or what kind of tasks? You know, just tell us a little bit about researching in order to get this thing just right.
Yeah, so I'll try to speak briefly about this. But this is, I believe, my 4th trip to Birmingham since October. And at some point we were joking that they were going to give me an office downstairs. I was coming back so much. So I really feel like, you know, I guess I'll go back a little bit. Like, I've done projects like this a couple times now, without naming specifically what they are. Part of my process, you know, first with making the icons is, again, sort of starting with the history, starting with the person. So I make all sort of decisions about, you know, the work that's going to be produced. And so it's really a personal take on the person versus trying to sort of retell history, if you will. So, I start there, and but in this expanded way that I'm now invited to come and consider and to make produce something. One of the things that is really important for me is to sort of be present in the place and to go to important sites, sort of like a journalist, but, you know, not taking anything away from the job of a journalist.
Take it away.
I'm not a journalist.
Take it away.
All right. But, you know, so it's really important for me to be present and absorb, like, the energy of the places that, you know, that the history occurred. And so I had a very specific set of locations that I wanted to visit after we decided that I would come down. So we went all over the city, but, you know, I wanted to, you know, just go to these sites and observe the energy of the site and sort of think about you know, the history from that standpoint. Because again, I sort of believe that, like, as much as anything, I'm kind of, don't take this word too specifically, but channeling the energy of the person, because I'm ultimately trying to make art. I'm ultimately trying to make something that's powerful. I'm ultimately trying to make something that's meaningful. And I do, like, humbly, and I want to say that again, I do humbly attempt to do something that I hope has an impact that's greater than, like, me as the maker. And I think that this is a moment that feels like that for me, you know, because as artists, we sort of sit in our little spaces and we come up with, like, and again, not taking anything away from that process, but, you know, we get to sort of spend all of that time alone trying to sort of come up with things to do. But when it, you know, and we're very fortunate when we're brought to, you know, a place like this, in a situation like this, and we get to kind of experience you, all of you, in this, and that for me is powerful. So, like, this is for you. In the same way that the project that I did in the Bronx, I feel was for the people in the Bronx and for, you know, the generations that would come and experience that work, you know. So I first was impacted by the story of Dr. Shuttlesworth through art, Spike Lee's 4 Little Girls. And I thought, like, okay, who is this person? I mean, just the clip of him after his home was bombed and him sort of saying, like, you know, when he was spoken to that by, I think, the policeman, and he said that, you know, I'm not going anywhere. And I thought to myself, like, my goodness, you know, because I don't know that I would have that courage. I don't know that I could, you know, keep my family, you know, there. And so, like, that spoke to me. And I knew, before I knew that there was this opportunity that something would happen. I didn't know what would happen, but it's again, like, deeply, I don't like using terms like serendipitous, but it's deeply spiritual that, you know, again, I find myself in this space at this moment talking about this incredible human and getting to produce something that of this nature here for y'all, not you know, the y'all is still there for y'all, not me.
I'm gonna ask if Ms. Ruby or Dr. Bouyer want to make any comment on what's been said so far here. But maybe something that we might want to work out in the meantime is, for the questions, is there a microphone that's going to circulate, or what's the plan for questions? Carrie? Where's Carrie? We don't. Okay. Okay. So is there going to be a microphone? We'll make do with these. Okay, no problem. All right, that's just what I want to find out. Ms. Ruby, is there anything you'd like to say kind of in response to the different ideas that have come up on the panel so far?
Yes, and I remembered what I forgot. First of all, Dr. Martha Bouyer does a program called Stony the Road, which invites teachers from all over the nation, world, to come in to learn Birmingham's history. And my friend Jackie James had been on one of those. And she also wrote a series of books, Friends of Dr. Martin Luther King. She wrote about Reverend Vivian first and then Daddy. Well, Jackie asked her if we could tag along. And I've been to 2 of them. And the third one that she let me tag along on was the 50th anniversary of the march over the bridge. When I heard Barack Obama call my father's name, it justified everything that I have been seeking to do. He recognized Daddy. When the airport was named, he wrote him a personal letter saying, "I stand on your shoulders." When he died, he wrote a condolence letter. I've never met him, but I, at 77, never ever thought that I'd see a black president. So I'm very thankful to Dr. Martha for what she is doing and has been doing. to educate people about Birmingham, because really it all began at Bethel. And then the next gentleman, thank you, give her a hand, please. Rico, I think you are just wonderful. He is such a humble and talented man. And I like the way he couldn't find his words, but he said, it's a spiritual thing about it. Everything we do in the black race is spiritual. We depend on our God. He has brought us so far. He is the reason that we have hope. Older people used to say, you sure hope me. People say, Grandma, don't say that. That's not good language. But it was good language. Because you helped me, you gave me hope. And that's what we must do as people, as parents, as brothers and sisters. Thank you, Rico. And Haley, let's give him another hand, please. I can't thank
Dr.
you
Bouyer,
enough.
you can have the last word before we give the word to the people.
What did you say? What?
He said I could speak.
For Dr. Bouyer, yeah.
Excuse me.
I just want to say that one of the things that I like to do as an educator, and especially working with other people, and we do this a lot at Bethel as well, we try to find every possible way to connect people to the experience. And right now we use a lot of poetry, we use a lot of music, and now I've got some art. I mean, honestly, I've had people drawing on canvas and doing all kind of wonderful things. But when we first heard about this project, I understand that there are many different ways to communicate, and we all learn in different ways. And if we can put art to work to help young people and adults learn about this history, and as Rico, I'm like Ruby, as he started talking and sharing his vision and talking about the spirituality of it and the energy that drove him to do this, I was just sold on it. But really and truly, when you think about how do we educate, let's use every means possible, whatever we can do to connect. Once we can connect, we can teach people anything. Thank you.
Wonderful. So I think what we're going to do now is I'm going to do the honors myself so that I'll have the microphone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start in this neighborhood, and then after that I'll go over to this neighborhood. So if anybody would like to offer any comments or certainly any questions to our distinguished panel. A wave in the back. Okay, we'll start in the back and we'll come on down. Okay. And if you don't mind introducing yourself, just so that at least probably everybody here knows everybody, but I don't know you, so yeah.
Well, actually, I speak loud.
We're gonna send down the microphone anyway, because I think it's being recorded.
Good evening, everyone. Isn't this a wonderful event? Yes. Thank you to the Museum of Art. Is it on? Okay, everyone's, okay. Wonderful event, glad to be here. I think one thing that we miss, I do historical tours, I've been doing them in Birmingham for many years. I think one of the things that my people who come on the tours always want to know is they want to know about everyday life. We go through black communities. When I bring them to Birmingham, you see a big bus coming through your neighborhood, it's probably me. And I'm probably talking about you, because that's what they want to know. They want to know about the people who followed Reverend Shuttlesworth. You know, he was very brave, courageous, but think about those other people behind him and the people who were on the sides of them swinging bats and had dogs and all of that. I think that I would love it if Francis would talk about living in North Birmingham and things that happen to you that show the generosity and the ability to get it done in the black neighborhood. She grew up in North Birmingham. So do you mind telling that, Francis?
Hello, everybody. As she said, I am Frances Elizabeth Foster White. I grew up in Collegeville, right next door to Reverend Shuttlesworth. Ricky and I have been friends since 1953 when they came to Birmingham at 8 years old. I have seen, before Reverend Shuttlesworth came to town, I've seen the Ku Klux ride through neighborhoods with their hoods on, burn crosses in front of our houses, and say what they said over the megaphones. I never understood what they said, but I knew it was something bad. 1953, when Reverend Shuttlesworth came to Birmingham, it was like God sent, because God sent him here, and I always will believe that. I'm 77 also. I will always believe that, because he turned thoughts around, he turned minds around, he learned us to stand our ground, and as a young person, he taught us not to fight back, how to be nonviolent, because as a child, if somebody hit you, you're going to retaliate one way or the other. But he taught us all of that. Okay, I stayed with the movement and everything. One day he asked me, he said, "Francis, do you think you're going to want to be a part of this?" I said, "Yes, sir." And I sat in positions. That was one of the first sit-ins in Birmingham. I sat in positions at the lunch counter, and it took me right away to the juvenile. Afterwards, once coming down on the spiral stairway, Bull Connor was downstairs waiting on us, and he had the other kids in the car. But let me say, my choice to sit in positions was because there was a lady that came on TV named Loretta Young. She was she was so ladylike, and she had so much class to me. She walked down a spiral staircase. That's why I chose positions, because they had a spiral staircase. I walked that staircase with so much grace. All the Baptists was in me, everything. Reverend Shuttlesworth, my parents, everybody just stood up in me that day. So we went on, we got downstairs. Bull Connor said, "Get in the car, heifer." Well, I said right away, I'm not a heifer. I said, "There's no seat in the car for me, and I'm not sitting in that car wrinkling up my brand new dress my mother gave me for my birthday." It was in August. My birthday is Monday. It was the week before my birthday, after my birthday. And I didn't sit in the car, so he made the kids get over. He said, "If you don't sit in that car, heifer, I will take my gun and hit you with it." So they said it was a German Luger, whatever it was. But anyway, the kids got over, and I sat in the car and went on to juvenile proudly. So I made my mark that day, and from then on, we ran from the guns, the dogs, the hoses, the police, Bull Connor, everybody. But it was a joy because we had accomplished something. That day on TV, that evening, my goal was to say, the people know what they're doing to us down here in Birmingham. So we made television so everybody found out about it, and things but without Reverend Shuttlesworth, things would have been bleak. You know, it would have been very bleak for us, but he brought it to pass. He did what God sent him here to do. And I'm very happy to know that I was a part of that. I'm so glad to have learned a lot of things by being nonviolent. Now you've learned to stand your ground, so.
Thank you. I'm going to take two on this side, and then I'm going to come over to your neighborhood.
Clarence Muhammad. I had to sit in the foot soldiers headquarters and listen to Tommy Wren and Colonel Stone talk about the legendary Fred Shuttlesworth. When he was here working, he would never have time to talk. So what most impacted me was what you talked about when he got out the hospital bed and he came and reinitiated that march. Can you tell us a little bit about the background, the impact? Because and there's so much they used to say, I probably don't remember, or maybe I didn't hear, but he got blackballed. Can you talk about that impact of him restarting the march and the blackballing from the SCLC?
It never really stopped, because when he said, "You can't do this," the people of Birmingham followed Daddy. And they did what he said, even though he was ill in the hospital. President Kennedy asked Dr. King to do that. And in the movie that I'm going to see, there's a thing. I'm headed to Chicago tomorrow. It's called Today is Yesterday. A gentleman named Ken Sago has done a short film on what happened in 1963. And he talks about the confrontation, the children going to jail. And we need to know what happened. People don't realize how people sacrificed during that time. There were people who lost jobs, people who lost lives, but the story has not been told. Even the movement choir, Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights Choir, is now the Carlton Reese Memorial Choir. We've had several programs here, and I've asked them to sing. And at one time, they stop a song and give their testimonies. Even today, there are people that will not testify because of the fear. Segregation was a sin against God and his people. I was raised in segregation. I was made to feel that I was much less than what I was. I'm sure I could have been much more had I not been born and educated in the South. Segregation was terrible. If you look at apartheid, it's gone. Africa is doing better. Like Dr. Bouyer say, they sing, "We shall overcome." But the children of segregation still suffer. My friend Laquita is here today. She wrote a book years ago. And I forget the name of it. Was that the nappy-headed? One more time, dear.
Nappy-minded ideologies.
But she asked me, thank you. Old people can't hear sometimes. But she asked me to write the foreword. And it was not until I wrote the foreword that I realized what segregation had done to me. Even though my daddy fought it, we petitioned against it, we did everything. But segregation is a thing that stops you in your forward motion. And even when we left here in '61, we still had this inferiority thing about us. And the people of Cincinnati did not necessarily welcome us because here he comes starting trouble up here. So we missed, as children, a lot of opportunities. And the worst thing you can do, people, is to hurt a child, whether he's firstborn or 77 like me. We're all God's children. We should be doing it. Let me tell you what I was trying to remember before. Man said, "Why are you guys not rich like everybody else?" My daddy always came home, emptied his pockets when he went off to speak. And Francis, our neighbor, we would sit at the dining room table and we had the rule, count it 3 times and then divide it 2 ways. The Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights and Bethel Baptist Church. We have always been a self-sacrificing. When Daddy chose to go to Phillips High School, he took his 2 oldest children, my sister Patricia Ann and me. But there was also another young man in that car. His name was Nathaniel Lee. He became a minister and he just passed maybe 3 years ago. But he should be honored too for going there to Phillips High School. When our house was bombed in 1956 Christmas night, it wasn't just our family, minus my sister Pat, who had been burned. There was also Mr. and Mrs. Robinson there, a deacon at our church, and their granddaughter. We need to tell the truth and the whole truth, because indeed, the truth will make us free. I am so thankful for these remarks and the comments that you're making, because you know what? People are starting to realize that I'm okay and you're okay. But when we work together, we can get so much done if we do it in love.
Okay, we're coming over to your neighborhood next. You want to just say a couple words?
I keep thinking tonight of James Weldon Johnson. Have we not come to the place for which our fathers sighed? And it's so wonderful to be here and part of the celebration. And I really credit Dr. Bouyer for the work she does for researchers. I mean, looking at her files and the materials she gives out. But the one thing I want to say, and I didn't experience many of the things that Ricky did, Ricky as we call her, so I have come to an understanding of what Daddy did through a scholastic point, and it was when I watched James Nabrit's 1969 Chronicle that he said that Daddy had the most cases before the Supreme Court. And I think it's an important point because we talk about his courage, but I think it's important to focus on his vision.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Caroline. Thank you so much.
Before you get
see an
there, I just
enthusiastic
want to
hand.
comment a little bit about what Carolyn said in regards to Reverend Shuttlesworth and this reinterpretation of the First Amendment. Reverend Shuttlesworth definitely had more cases to go before the U.S. Supreme Court than any citizen in our nation's history. But more importantly, he redefined the First Amendment. He had actually been arrested, bailed out of jail, and was standing downtown at Loveman's, I think, a Pizzitz department store, and someone walks up and starts talking. The officer recognized who he was and immediately had him arrested for standing on the corner talking. So as a result, he took the case all the way to the Supreme Court, and it redefined this idea of association. The Klan tried to do the same thing. It didn't work for them, trying to say they had the right to associate, but it did not happen. In 1963, when Dr. King tried to end the movement because of the Kennedy administration, they actually, when this got started, Reverend Shuttlesworth had 7 principles, things that he wanted to see happen and change. Well, when he's in the hospital, as Ruby pointed out, Burke Marshall, who represented the president, comes over to talk with them, and they're at the Drew House on Dynamite Hill. And they decided, this is the city leaders, that if you all will stop the demonstrations, we will do at least 3 of the things on your list of 7. So Reverend Shuttlesworth really said, this is my movement, and I'll say when it's going to stop. And he was not stopping, initially, because he wanted all 7. The idea, why would you quit right in the middle of what you're doing? We're making great progress. Don't stop now. There's this great image of him in the courtyard at the Gaston Motel. You can tell by his body language, his face, he's very upset. But he goes on because the business leaders in Birmingham, they're saying, we're going to do it. We'll take the sign down. We'll do this. We'll do that. And they didn't. So we passed out at Bethel a lot of primary source documents, and one that we passed out says more in 64. They lied. The business leaders didn't do anything. So if you thought 63 was bad, 64 more.
All right, I'm going to give an opportunity in this neighborhood right afterwards.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Catherine Harville Billingsley. Hi, Miss Ruby.
I do.
I grew up right across the tracks from where you lived. I remember the bombings. I remember how it shook our home in Collegeville. I remember running out in the middle of the street as a little girl, frightened as I could be. My heart is beating so fast now. I am so honored and so happy to see you.
Thank you.
Because of what your father did, I end up being the first or the second on every job that I had. If I couldn't be the first or the second, Miss Ruby, I didn't want the job.
All right.
So you're 77 and I'm 73. And I know when I say this that you felt the same way. I couldn't understand why people hated us.
That's right.
Just because of the color of our skin. It just didn't make sense. And when your family left Birmingham, I was so sad. I was so sad. Never knew I'd get a chance to see any of you again. But I told my grandson the story quickly before I left home today. And I said, I hope I get a chance to get close enough to somebody in that family because I brought my book, A Walk to Freedom. Yes, that's a good one. I hope you'll put at least a dot on the page that your father referenced. I would be just so honored to share this with my grandchildren. Okay. And I want to thank my son's girlfriend. I want to thank her for bringing me here today because I have tuned everybody in this room out, Miss Ruby, and your friend, Miss White. We're from Collegeville.
Yeah.
Everybody in this room has been tuned out. It's just me, you, and her. And Rico. Thank you, Rico. When you use the word spiritual, I connected with you. I connected with you. And I thank y'all for giving me this opportunity. I am so honored, so honored.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Billingsley.
Thank you. I'm Stephen Humphreys, and I'm an attorney, and I was struck by the comments about Dr. Shuttlesworth's prolific legal mind, and the way I first really came to know about Dr. Shuttlesworth was I do mostly public corruption, you know, anti-government corruption kind of cases, and the way I first came to know about Dr. Shuttlesworth and learned about him was through the case you just mentioned, which was Shuttlesworth versus the city of Birmingham, and it has an even more general application than you said about the First Amendment. It's about the case really stands for really a government unfairly and unjustly applying its laws, and the laws are supposed to bring justice, and when a government is corrupt and uses the law for an unjust purpose, and he was actually charged with blocking the sidewalk. There was an ordinance, you couldn't block the sidewalk, and went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said one man standing there can't block the sidewalk. So we're not fooled by what, you know, Birmingham is trying to say, and so that led me into a whole other study of all of these cases, so I actually developed a course around it that I'm going to teach at UAB this fall on the cases that went from Birmingham to the U.S. Supreme Court, telling the history of the civil rights movement in Birmingham. But I think it's important to mention that I used that case and actually went and argued it in the U.S. Supreme Court. So not only did Reverend Shuttlesworth, you know, bring all those cases and make all those arguments, but as I had the honor to mention to Ms. Ruby earlier, that now those cases are still being argued for their precedent in the Supreme Court.
I think that course is, you know, that's going to be taught this semester at UAB. I mean, that's living legacy right there. That's living legacy right there.
I'd like your business card, please.
Okay. By the way, Carrie, I'm ready to have this conversation forever, right? So when you need it to be like a 5-minute thing, you tell me, all right? Okay. We got about 5. Okay. I'm coming to you. We're going to keep rising to the top here.
Okay, I'll be quick. My name is Lisa McNair, and hey, Miss Bester. And I'm part of a civil rights family. My sister was one of the 4 girls killed in the 16th Street church bombing. And as someone who knows a lot of civil rights people, didn't none of us get no rich. Like, if it's some money somewhere that we were supposed to pick up, y'all need to let us know. And like I used to tell little kids at school when I was little, y'all rich because y'all on TV. No, but everybody on TV ain't rich. You know, they just happen to get somebody to put a camera in their face. So I have always wondered, and I think people don't think enough about, they see your dad, but they don't think about the stuff that you had to go through as a child of that person. All that other stuff that nobody talks about. And I always wonder why you all left, and maybe if you can share a story that impacted you, that sticks with you about what happened to you as just being a child throughout all that.
We left because my mother said we had to go. My sister was at Spelman for her first year. She even babysat for Dr. King and Mrs. King. And the next year, it was time for me to go to college. And after me, it was time for Fred Jr. to go to college. And we were deep into everything. The Freedom Riders had just been there. We had been arrested for sitting on the front of the bus coming back from Gaston and that travel. My mother said, we have to go. Jim Nabrowski, I can't remember who he is now, but he was real big in the movement. Please? Yeah, right. I always have help. But anyway, they got scholarships for us at UC, and this is when tuition was like $100 for a quarter or something. This is 1961. So Pat transferred from Spelman. I entered, well, we left here. I graduated May 31st, my mother's birthday, and June 1st, Ollie Range was headed to Cincinnati to bring us so I could go to UC to take a foreign language so that I could go to college. But we are in Cincinnati today. Even though Daddy didn't want to leave, he believed in education. And my mother insisted that we go. Reverend Booth had asked Revelation Baptist Church. I know 3 wonderful churches in my life: Bethel Baptist, Revelation, and Greater New Light Baptist Church. But we are here, we are in Cincinnati now because of the education that my mother knew we must have. And it paid off. All 4 of us have masters, and my baby sister has a doctor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitter. Hello, my name is Gina. It is really an honor just to be in the same space as you. It truly is, Ms. Ruby. Thank you. I have a quick question. It's actually for Rico. When I learned about this project coming, working at the Institute, we heard a little early, and we were happy to be, just a part of the research that you did behind it. But I immediately Googled you, like an elder millennial, and I read that your pieces are depictions of energy illuminating from these heroes. So I wondered if you could describe the energy that's illuminating from Reverend Shuttlesworth.
Once again, I'm very humbled to be here. But no, I think the energy is just like, I think it's just like, the topic of the panel is illuminating Shuttlesworth, and I think it's really just light, the light and the strength and the power. Power is a really important word of this individual. So yeah, I think that's it. It's one thing when you conceptualize a project, because you spend a lot of time looking and thinking about it. It's kind of like waiting for your child to enter the world. So there's a lot of anticipation. So it's really exciting for me to be here, to have begun to execute this in real space, in real time. And I'm very excited to pull the tape and experience the piece this weekend as a piece. But so far, and hopefully you'll agree, it feels really good, really good. My voice is cracking because I'm still in puberty. At 50 something. But yeah, so I'm really excited just to actually pull the tape and just have it, experience it, and then have all of you experience it. But again, it's yours. It's not mine. So, all right. And hopefully you'll all come and experience it. And I just want to point out one thing really quickly, that a lot of people involved in the project, working on the project, helping to organize all the trips and make it possible for me to be here and have a very fluid and organic sort of experience. Of course, Holly, of course, everybody at the institution, Antoinette, of course, my partner in life, my wife, who allowed me to come down numerous times, of course, the person that helps me and has to sit and listen to all my nonsense, Martha, my assistant, but Julie has to listen to more. But Hina Zaidi, we want to say thank you to you for all of the effort and time that you put into this, working with Holly and running around and just helping to facilitate this. So I'd be remiss not to mention you in this whole process. So thank you.
You're making it sound like closing remarks, and I've promised the young lady here a turn on the floor. So I'm not going to say this is going to be the last question. After you, I'm going to work my way down. So if anyone wants to intercept me on the way, you have a chance, and then we'll close it out.
Good evening. My name is Georgia Morgan Blair. I grew up next door to Reverend Shuttlesworth's father, Morris Robinson, and I'm from the Oxmoor community. I knew Miss Alberta, your grandmother. I went to school, elementary school with Doris. I'm one of the children of the Crusade. I spent 10 days in Birmingham jail as a minor. I was stationed over at Fair Park, or where Fair Park Arena is now. And you and I are Facebook friends, Ruby. Don't forget it. So many of your family members I've known throughout my life, and they have always been strong-willed people. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. If anybody wants to catch me, yeah? Okay. Go ahead. You can, yeah, we'll get it to you. And you're going to have the last one. And then after that, we'll close it out.
Hey, so I just want to say thank you to everybody in here who has had a part in this, especially the people who actually lived during that time and had to make sacrifices and things like that. I can definitely say I stand on your shoulders. I actually went to Phillips Academy when they reopened it as a junior high, and I was in the first graduating class, so walking up those steps every day, I got to kind of think about some of the stuff you and your dad experienced. But my question is, how do we connect with the youth and share these stories? Yes. Because I'm always interested in sharing cultural history. This is not just Black history, this is American history. Yes. So how do we connect with the youth and keep this, this history going so that we don't lose this history from our ancestors and things like that? Right.
I often tell young people, go visit your grandparents, take a notebook and write and listen and tape. They were there. A lot of times people don't talk about it because it was a hard time. Sometimes it brings you to tears to think of what was done and how many people suffered. But you have to get away from that and move forward. Hope is the word for the Black people. He did not bring us this far to leave us. We must learn to talk to each other as we want to be talked to. The Bible says, do unto others as you would have them. Even though they're messing over you, do what you should do. Because I worked with a lady at Princeton, it was a suburban school, and I was there for 30 years and I retired. And she walked past me, and every time I said, how you doing? I won't call her name. She never spoke. And when I'd see her, good morning, she never spoke. The day that I retired, May 31st, 2001, she came up to me and she said, I am so sorry. I have been so mean to you, and you never, ever stopped talking and speaking and acknowledging me. And I never told anybody about it. I'm telling you. But we must do what is right to be done, because you know what? You can't show what you don't know. And if she was raised in a home that didn't show love or apathy or empathy or sympathy, she didn't know what to do. So realize that everybody is not you. So you have to be the best you can be to help people. And I thank you for asking that question, because we need to talk. We sure enough need to talk in our national capital. We need to work with our hearts. We're brilliant people, but we're not acting like we're brilliant. We need to do just like the Lord did. 5 words. He went about doing good. And even my grandson, my great-grand, who is 3 years old, knows the difference in good and bad. Thank you.
I want to also address that question, and there are 2 people here from another project that I work with called the Morgan Project. And if we really want to make a difference and ensure that this history is taught, we need to be a part of the Alabama State Course of Study, Social Studies. We really do, because if you want to make sure things are taught, everything is done by standards. and everything has to be, whatever's taught in a classroom has to be a part of the standards. I served on the Alabama State Course of Study Committee twice, and on one of those times, we kind of reorganized how we were going to teach U.S. history. Probably for a lot of people in the room, when we used to do this, we tried to teach it from the beginning to the current point in time, and we never ever got there. So when I served on the State Course of Study Committee, we changed how we were going to teach U.S. history. And finally, teachers were going to get an opportunity to teach U.S. history and modern times and teach the Civil Rights Movement. And that's how the Stoney Project got developed. I was the curriculum supervisor for Jefferson County Schools, and I knew that all of the teachers that I worked with had never ever been taught this in college. They never had a course, a formal training whatsoever. So my project got started trying to help local teachers. But if I had not been at the table when they were rewriting the course of study, and they're getting ready to do it again, and it's been very quietly done. So the Morgan Project, they're telling the story of Chuck Morgan, and their project is called Conflict and Courage. But they're looking for citizens. You don't have to be just a teacher to serve on the State Course of Study Committee. You can be a parent, a citizen, a business owner. They want all people to be a part. So if we want to make sure this history is taught, we need to contact the State Board of Education, and we want to find out when is that committee going to be impaneled, when are they meeting. I know Lisa went back down there in the spring. This was supposed to have been done about 2 years ago, but because of COVID, they decided, well, we'll just wait, and we won't do the course of study now. This is our opportunity. Show up, make a difference, write a letter to the State Board of Education, let them know that we're concerned and we're interested that all of the history is taught. We're not teaching critical race theory, we're teaching U.S. history. And if we step on people's toes, we step. But we have got to teach the history. We can't leave people out. We can't leave events out. And it's important. So I'm really charging everybody in the room. If you want to make a difference, you need to talk to people, and if possible, get on the committee. Get on the committee. Be a part of that. The committee normally meets for about a year. You're going back and forth to Montgomery, but that's the only way you're going to make a difference. If this is not in the standards, and really, I'm trying to go quickly here. When I first was on the first time we did it, Reverend Shuttlesworth, I think there were 2 people in the Alabama State Course of Study in 4th grade, and that may have been Rosa Parks and Dr. King. I could not believe who was not there, what events were not talked about, and in order for that to happen, so there we were, and I had an opportunity to make sure that those names were included. But in the meantime, we generally do this about every 5 to 10 years. We haven't changed ours in at least 15. So if you want to make a difference in terms of what is taught, how it's taught, and when, we need to be a part of that committee. If that means we're writing, we're Zooming, we're doing whatever, that's the only way we're going to get a chance to make sure that this history is taught and that these heroes and other people whose names we haven't called, often we refer to them as foot soldiers, people who stood up and made a difference, like Georgia. She's one of my church members. She was there, arrested 10 days. People like Ruby and Francis and the others in the room, they are a part of the story. Without them, I heard someone say just recently, without their piece of the puzzle, it's not complete. I need you to show up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bouyer. Thank you, Dr. Bouyer. So, as we wind this down, I just want to ask if Rico or Hallie want to make any final comments, if you feel like it. No? Beautiful. Hallie? Yeah.
Thank y'all for coming, especially the Shuttlesworth family. It's such an honor to have you here at the museum.
So, with all of that said, I'm sure it's not the end of the evening. I'm sure there'll be opportunities to mill around and chat some more. Ms. Ruby, Ms. Francis, Dr. Bouyer, Rico, and I want to give a special thanks to Hallie for bringing us together here. It's the museum, but really, Hallie did it with her team, Hannah, Carrie, the whole crew. So thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the honor of being able to be here. Thank you all for your work. The struggle continues. Thank you.